The cafe fell silent as a little girl's voice echoed through the morning chatter. "Mommy, that's the man who fixed our car," she said, pointing across the room. Her mother froze, coffee cup trembling in her hand. The man turned, a tall figure in a charcoal suit, surrounded by assistants and flashing cameras. The same man who'd knelt in the rain weeks ago, sleeves rolled up, helping two strangers on a deserted road. Except now, he wasn't just a stranger. He was the CEO whose name was printed on the newspaper beside her plate. Sarah Miller had learned to measure her life in small victories. Another day of Lucy's asthma staying manageable. Another shift at the diner completed without the car breaking down. Another night of nursing school textbooks after Lucy fell asleep. At 30, she'd perfected the art of making impossible schedules work through sheer determination and the refusal to let her daughter see how close to breaking she actually was. The small town outside the city suited them. Rent was cheaper, people were kinder, and Lucy's school was within walking distance on days when the car refused to start. Sarah worked part-time at Rosie's Diner, studied nursing at night, and built a life that was exhausting but tender, held together by love and stubbornness in equal measure. Lucy was 6 now, all scraped knees and endless questions, with Sarah's dark hair and her father's eyes, though Sarah tried not to think about that, about the man who'd walked away when pregnancy became real instead of theoretical. They were fine on their own. Better than fine. They had each other, and some days that felt like enough. This particular evening started badly. Sarah's shift had run late because someone called in sick. Lucy's after-school care closed at 6, and it was already 6:15. Sarah rushed out of the diner, apologies trailing behind her, and coaxed their ancient Honda to start. Third try, engine coughing, protest, but eventually catching. They made it 5 miles before the car died completely. Sarah coasted to the shoulder of a quiet road, rain beginning to fall in heavy sheets, and felt despair rise like water. No cell service, no nearby houses, just empty highway stretching in both directions, and Lucy starting to cough in the back seat. The wet, tight cough that meant her asthma was triggered by the cold air seeping through the car's poor seals. "It's okay, baby," Sarah said, forcing calm into her voice. "Someone will come. We'll be fine." But as rain hammered the roof and minutes stretched, Sarah's forced calm began to crack. They were 20 minutes from town. Lucy's breathing was getting worse, and Sarah had exactly $43 in her account until Friday's paycheck. Headlights appeared through the rain, a black sedan, expensive and out of place on this rural road. It slowed, then stopped in front of them. Sarah's first instinct was wariness. Lone woman, child, broken down car, isolated road. But she was also desperate enough that help outweighed fear. A man stepped out into the rain, tall, maybe late 30s, wearing what looked like an expensive white shirt that was immediately soaked through. No umbrella, no jacket, no hesitation. He walked to Sarah's window and she cracked it slightly. "Engine trouble?" His voice was calm, matter-of-fact, as if helping strangers in storms was routine. "It just died. I think it's the alternator. Or maybe the battery. I'm not sure." "Pop the hood," he said simply. Sarah hesitated. "I don't have money for a mechanic right now. If you could just call a tow truck when you get signal." "I'm not a mechanic, but I can probably figure it out." He smiled slightly. "I work with cars." Something in his tone, competent without being condescending, made Sarah trust him. She pulled the hood release, and he disappeared into the rain, flashlight from his phone illuminating the engine compartment. 15 minutes later, covered in grease and completely soaked, he returned to her window. "Loose battery cable. Should get you home, but you'll need a proper mechanic to check the alternator soon. It's failing." "Thank you so much. I don't know how to repay you." "You just did." He glanced at Lucy in the back seat, noting her labored breathing, and pulled off his suit jacket. "Here, it's warmer than what she has." Before Sarah could protest, he draped it over Lucy, tucked it around her with surprising gentleness, and said softly, "Take care of your mom, little one." Then he was gone, disappearing into his sedan, driving away before Sarah could ask his name or properly thank him, leaving only the jacket and the ghost of unexpected kindness. They made it home. Sarah carried Lucy inside, settled her with the nebulizer, and sat staring at the expensive jacket draped over her couch. Clearly tailored, clearly costly, smelling faintly of cologne and rain. Days later, finally finding time to properly clean the jacket so she could return it, Sarah found a business card tucked in the inside pocket. Heavy cardstock, embossed gold lettering. Ethan Cole, CEO, Cole Automotive Group. Sarah stared at the business card for a long time, processing. Cole Automotive Group was one of the largest car manufacturers in the state, maybe the country. She'd seen their commercials, their billboards, their name on the news discussing economic development and job creation, and the CEO had fixed her car in the rain. Lucy called him the car hero and asked daily when they could return his jacket. Sarah researched how to properly contact someone of his stature. Executive assistants, formal letters, the careful protocol of approaching the unreachably wealthy. But before she could figure it out, opportunity arrived unexpectedly. The diner's catering division got a contract for a major event, the Cole Automotive Charity Gala, annual fundraiser for various local causes. Sarah volunteered for the extra hours, needing the money, not realizing until she arrived at the venue exactly whose event she'd be serving. The ballroom was spectacular. Crystal chandeliers, tables draped in white linen, flowers that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Sarah moved through with her tray of champagne, trying to blend into the background, the way service staff learned to exist without being noticed. Then she saw him. Ethan Cole stood near the stage, surrounded by elegantly dressed people, looking every inch the CEO in a perfectly tailored suit. He was laughing at something someone said, relaxed and confident, and Sarah felt the absurd impulse to hide. But Lucy's voice echoed in her head. We need to return his jacket, and Sarah made a decision. During a break, she approached one of his assistants, explained briefly about the jacket, asked if there was a way to return it properly. The assistant looked skeptical but took her information. 20 minutes later, Sarah was pulled aside by security and escorted, politely but firmly, to a private hallway where Ethan stood waiting. Recognition flickered across his face immediately. You're the woman from the highway. Sarah nodded, suddenly nervous in a way she hadn't been on that rainy road. I have your jacket. I cleaned it. I wanted to return it properly, but I didn't know how to reach you without. You're working the event, Ethan said, glancing at her catering uniform. Extra hours. I didn't know it was your gala until I arrived. Something in his expression softened. How's your daughter? Lucy, right? She said her name. Sarah was surprised he remembered. She's good. Better. She has asthma. The cold air that night triggered it. But she's fine now. She talks about you constantly, calls you her hero. I just tightened a cable. You stopped, in the rain, for strangers. That's not just. Sarah struggled for words. That meant everything. Ethan looked uncomfortable with the gratitude, changing the subject. Have you eaten? At all tonight? I'm working. Consider it repayment for returning my jacket so clean, it looks better than when I bought it. He gestured toward a quiet corner. Please, 5 minutes. The event's running smoothly without me micromanaging. They sat in an alcove away from the main ballroom, and Ethan had staff bring actual food, not the expensive hors d'oeuvres guests were eating, but substantial protein and vegetables. Sarah ate with the focused intensity of someone who'd skipped lunch to make it to this shift on time. You're studying nursing? Ethan asked, having somehow done his research. Night classes, when Lucy's asleep. I'm about halfway through the program. That's remarkable. Working full-time and raising a child and pursuing a degree? It's survival, not remarkable. Just what needs doing. They talked for 20 minutes about nothing consequential. Lucy's school, Sarah's classes, the challenges of juggling impossible schedules. Ethan asked questions with genuine interest, listened with complete attention, and Sarah found herself relaxing despite the surreal situation. Then chaos erupted in the ballroom. A child's voice cutting through adult conversation, someone trying to intervene, and Lucy's unmistakable shout, "That's him! That's the car hero!" Sarah's coworker appeared, apologetic and frantic. I'm so sorry. I couldn't leave her with the sitter. Thought she'd stay quiet in the staff area, but she saw him on the monitor and just ran. Lucy had made it into the ballroom, weaving through expensive gowns and tailored suits, heading straight for Ethan with the single-minded determination of a 6-year-old on a mission. Security tried to intercept her, but Ethan stood quickly, walking to meet her. Lucy, Sarah called, mortified. but Ethan was already kneeling at her daughter's level. "Hello again," he said gently. "Did you take good care of your mom like I asked?" Lucy nodded solemnly. "I did, and Mommy took care of your jacket. She washed it 3 times to get all the grease out and pressed it and everything." "I'm sure she did an excellent job. Are you really a car hero? Mommy says you're a CEO, but I think car hero sounds better." Guests had gathered, watching this strange scene. The CEO kneeling before a small girl in discount store clothes while his charity gala continued around them. Some were charmed. Others looked vaguely scandalized. Ethan seemed to notice none of it. "I think car hero does sound better, much better than CEO. You can call me that if you like. Can you teach me how to fix cars so I can help Mommy when hers breaks?" "Absolutely, anytime you want." Sarah arrived, pulling Lucy back gently. "I'm so sorry. We should go." But Ethan stood, addressing the watching crowd naturally. "Everyone, this is Lucy and her mother Sarah. They're the reason I arrived late to my own gala. My car broke down, and they stopped to help me change a tire." The lie was smooth, protective, redirecting the narrative. "Lucy here wants to be a mechanic. I think we should encourage that." The crowd applauded. The moment transformed from awkward to heartwarming through Ethan's careful social maneuvering. Sarah understood what he'd done, protected them from judgment, given them dignity, used his status as shield rather than weapon. Later, as they were leaving, Ethan found them. "Thank you for returning my jacket, and for bringing Lucy. She was the highlight of my evening." Lucy hugged his leg spontaneously. "Thank you for fixing our car, Mr. Car Hero." Sarah met his eyes over her daughter's head. "Thank you for stopping that night, and for tonight, for everything. Anytime you need help, with the car, with anything, please call me, really." He handed her a card with his personal number written on it. "I mean it." Sarah tucked the card away carefully and they left, and she tried not to think about how easy it had been to talk to him, how kind he was to Lucy, how much she wanted to call that number for reasons that had nothing to do with cars. Over the following weeks, their paths crossed more frequently than seemed coincidental. Ethan started eating breakfast at Rosie's Diner. It was out of his way from his office, but he claimed he liked the coffee. Sarah served him eggs and tried to ignore how her coworkers whispered. Lucy drew him pictures during her after-school hours at the diner, elaborate scenes of cars being fixed by heroes. Victoria, Ethan's PR director, was less charmed. She cornered Sarah one morning as Sarah arrived for her shift. "I need you to understand something," Victoria said, her tone professional but cold. "Ethan Cole is not just a man. He's a brand. His personal life affects stock prices, investor confidence, public perception. Getting too close to him, developing any kind of relationship beyond professional, could damage everything he's built." Sarah felt her face flush. "I'm not trying to develop anything. He comes to the diner sometimes. I serve him food, that's all." "Is it? Because the tabloids are already speculating. Billionaire CEO and the single mom. They're watching him, which means they're watching you and your daughter. Is that attention you want? Of course not. Then maybe create some distance, for everyone's benefit." Sarah mentioned the conversation to no one, but she started avoiding Ethan's table when possible, asking coworkers to serve him. She ignored 2 calls from his personal number. When Lucy asked why Mr. Car Hero didn't visit anymore, Sarah made vague excuses about how busy important people were. Meanwhile, Ethan was wrestling with his own complications. His wife had died 3 years ago in a car accident, a brake failure that investigators said might have been caught with proper maintenance. Ethan blamed himself for not noticing the warning signs, for being too busy with work to pay attention to the small mechanical details that could save lives. Meeting Sarah and Lucy on that rainy highway had felt like penance and possibility simultaneously. A chance to stop and pay attention, to fix something before tragedy struck. But now he found himself thinking about them constantly, about Sarah's fierce independence and Lucy's unself-conscious joy, about the way they'd built a life from stubbornness and love. Victoria warned him too. This infatuation, it's not infatuation. Whatever it is, it's dangerous. You can't just rescue a struggling mother and her child like some kind of fairy tale. The optics are terrible. The board is concerned. Investors are asking questions. Since when do I let investors dictate my personal life? Since your personal life became public property, that's the cost of being who you are. Ethan knew she was right, but he hated her for being right. He'd spent 3 years carefully empty, going through motions, building his company while avoiding anything that required feeling. Sarah and Lucy had reminded him what connection felt like, what purpose meant beyond quarterly earnings. Then Sarah's car broke down again. Lucy's asthma attack was severe this time, triggered by anxiety about the car dying, by the cold as they waited for help, by the rapid progression from mild wheezing to full respiratory distress. Sarah called 911, then called Ethan's number without thinking, without pride, just desperate terror as her daughter struggled to breathe. Ethan answered on the first ring. "Sarah, I need help. Lucy can't breathe. We're on Route 9, near mile marker 15. Ambulance is coming, but I can't. I'm coming. Stay on the phone with me." He drove faster than safe, racing through rain that echoed the night they'd met. Sarah's voice in his ear, trying to stay calm for Lucy while fear bled through every word. Ethan talked her through keeping Lucy upright, keeping her calm, monitoring her breathing. He reached them minutes before the ambulance, skidding to a stop on the shoulder. Lucy was pale, lips slightly blue, breathing in harsh gasps. Sarah was crying, trying not to let Lucy see her panic. Ethan assessed the situation with the kind of efficiency that came from trauma training all executives received. "Lucy, look at me. You're okay. The medicine is coming. Just breathe slowly with me." He carried her to his car, warmer than hers, and waited with them until paramedics arrived. Then he followed the ambulance to the hospital, stayed during admission, paced the waiting room while Sarah disappeared with Lucy into the emergency department. 2 hours later, Sarah emerged. Lucy was stable, sleeping, oxygen levels normal after aggressive treatment. Sarah collapsed into a chair beside Ethan, adrenaline crashing. "I can't keep doing this," she whispered. "I can't keep being rescued by you. It's not fair to you, to Lucy, to anyone. You have this life, this important, complicated life, and we're just complications, problems that keep needing solving." Ethan turned to face her fully. "You're not a problem. You're the only real thing in my life right now. I'm a struggling single mom who can't afford a reliable car or better asthma medication for her kid. That's not inspiring. That's just sad. You're raising an incredible daughter while working full-time and pursuing a nursing degree. You're doing impossible things every single day. That's not sad. That's remarkable." Ethan took her hands. "And I'm not rescuing you. I'm just here, showing up. The way you'd show up if our situations were reversed. But our situations aren't reversed. That's the problem. You're a CEO. I'm a diner waitress. Those worlds don't mix." "Then let me stand with you instead of above you," Ethan said quietly. "Not rescuing, not saving, just being here, together." Sarah wanted to argue, to maintain the distance Victoria had insisted was necessary. But she was exhausted, scared, and tired of pretending she didn't want exactly what Ethan was offering. Someone to stand beside her, to share the impossible weight of keeping everything together. "Okay," she whispered finally. "Together. But if this gets complicated for you, it's already complicated, and I don't care. Lucy's okay. That's all that matters right now." They sat in the hospital waiting room, hands linked, and let themselves believe that maybe complicated didn't mean impossible, that maybe different worlds could find ways to intersect, that maybe being rescued and being loved weren't mutually exclusive after all. Lucy recovered, but the hospital stay had revealed larger problems. Her asthma was poorly controlled, requiring medications Sarah's insurance barely covered, and regular specialist visits she couldn't afford. The doctor recommended a nebulizer for home use, environmental controls, possibly immunotherapy, all beyond Sarah's financial reach. Ethan arranged it anonymously through his family's charitable foundation. The medications arrived with paperwork showing Sarah qualified for assistance programs she hadn't known existed. A new nebulizer was delivered by the hospital's equipment bank. The specialist suddenly had openings and accepted her insurance without the usual copays. Sarah knew it was Ethan, confronted him about it during one of his diner visits. "I can't accept this. It's too much." "You're not accepting it from me. You're accepting it from a foundation that exists to help families exactly like yours. I just made sure the paperwork got processed quickly. Ethan, would you refuse help if it came from anyone else? Or only because it comes from me? Sarah had no good answer for that. Pride warred with practicality, and practicality won because Lucy's health mattered more than her ego. Meanwhile, Sarah's nursing program was progressing. She'd excelled in her clinical rotations, and the hospital where Lucy had been treated offered her a position after graduation. Not charity, not because of Ethan, but because her supervisor had been impressed with her skills and dedication. The job offer felt like vindication, proof she could build something on her own merit, not just through Ethan's connections. She accepted immediately, and graduation suddenly felt achievable rather than theoretical. Ethan came to her graduation ceremony, sitting with Lucy in the audience, both of them clapping loudly when Sarah's name was called. Afterward, Lucy presented her mother with a handmade card showing 3 stick figures, her, Sarah, and Ethan, next to a car labeled Fixed. "See?" Lucy said. "Nobody's alone anymore." Sarah looked at the drawing, at her daughter's guileless depiction of their unconventional family, and felt something shift. She'd been so focused on independence, on not needing rescue, that she'd missed what Lucy had seen clearly. Being alone wasn't strength, and accepting help wasn't weakness. They were better together. Ethan started visiting regularly, carefully navigating the balance between support and interference. He taught Lucy basic car maintenance, showed her how to check oil and tire pressure, explained how engines worked with the patience of someone who genuinely enjoyed teaching. He brought Sarah coffee during night shifts at the hospital, asked about her patients, listened to her stories about the job's challenges and rewards. He was careful never to overstep, never to make Sarah feel dependent or less than. When her car needed major repairs, he connected her with his company's employee discount program, the same one his workers used, rather than just paying for it. When Lucy needed new school clothes, he mentioned a back-to-school drive his foundation ran where families could shop for free while maintaining dignity. Sarah understood what he was doing, using his resources to help without taking away her agency, supporting without smothering. It required careful thought, genuine respect, and the willingness to let her maintain independence even when direct help would be easier. One evening after Lucy was asleep, Sarah and Ethan sat on her small apartment balcony drinking cheap wine and watching traffic below. "Why me?" Sarah asked. "You could date anyone. Models, executives, people from your world who understand your life. Why spend time with a single mom working nights and driving a 15-year-old car?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. "My wife died in a car accident. Brake failure that might have been prevented with proper maintenance. I was too busy to notice the warning signs, too distracted by work to pay attention to the small mechanical details that save lives." He paused. "When I saw you on that highway, you and Lucy stranded in the rain, it felt like a chance to actually stop and pay attention, to fix something before tragedy struck instead of living with regret after. So this is penance? At first, maybe. But now?" He turned to face her. "Now it's the first time in 3 years I felt actually alive instead of just going through motions. You and Lucy remind me what matters. Not quarterly earnings or stock prices or the complicated corporate politics Victoria obsesses over. Just people. Connection. Showing up for each other." Sarah reached for his hand. "We're not a fairy tale, Ethan. My life is messy and complicated, and Lucy will always come first." "I know, and I wouldn't want it any other way." They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, and Sarah let herself believe that maybe this could work. Not despite their different worlds, but because they'd each found something essential in the other, something neither had known they needed. The jacket from that first night, cleaned, pressed, carefully preserved, Sarah finally returned it during one of Ethan's hospital visits. She left it on the chair in Lucy's room with a note. "You fixed more than our car. Thank you for stopping." Ethan found it after they'd left, read the note 3 times, and carefully folded the jacket knowing he'd never wear it again, but would keep it forever, a reminder of the rainy night that had changed everything. 6 months later, Ethan's company opened a new community center. Free car maintenance workshops for low-income families, financial literacy classes, childcare services, all designed to address the practical barriers that kept people struggling. He'd poured personal resources and corporate funding into the project, working with community organizations to ensure it actually served needs rather than just looking good in press releases. The opening ceremony was small by corporate standards. No fancy gala, just community members, local press, and the people the center would actually serve. Sarah and Lucy attended, sitting in the front row, both of them understanding this place existed, partly because Ethan had spent time with them, had seen firsthand what families needed. When Ethan took the stage to speak, he looked directly at Sarah. "The inspiration behind this place isn't me," he said clearly. "It's a mother and daughter who reminded me what humanity looks like. Sarah Miller is a nurse who worked full-time while studying for her degree and raising her child alone. She never asked for handouts, never expected rescue, just kept showing up and doing impossible things every single day. Lucy is 6 years old and wants to be a mechanic so she can help people whose cars break down." He paused, emotion evident. "They taught me that fixing things, whether it's cars or systems or broken parts of yourself, matters less than showing up. Stopping when everyone else drives past, paying attention to the details that seem small but change everything. This center exists because they showed me what really matters, and I wanted to build something that honored that lesson." Sarah was crying. The audience applauded. And Lucy, unable to contain herself, ran onto the stage and hugged Ethan's legs with 6-year-old enthusiasm. "You fixed us too," she whispered, loud enough for the microphone to catch. Ethan knelt, pulling Lucy into a proper hug. "We fixed each other, I think." After the ceremony, reporters wanted interviews, photos, the story behind the CEO and the single mom and the little girl. Ethan declined most of them, but agreed to one photo, the three of them standing together, Lucy in the middle holding both their hands, smiling with the unself-conscious joy of a child who felt secure. That evening, back at Sarah's apartment, which Ethan had visited so often it felt partially his, they sat on the balcony again while Lucy slept inside. "Victoria quit," Ethan mentioned. "Said I'd stop caring about optics and she couldn't work with someone who put personal feelings above corporate image." "I'm sorry." "I'm not. She was wrong. The best thing I've done for corporate image was remembering that companies are made of people and people respond to humanity, not polish." He paused. "The board approved expanding the community center model to 10 cities. Turns out genuine social responsibility actually improves company reputation." "Who knew?" Sarah laughed. "You knew. You just needed permission to care. I needed you to show me caring was possible, that not everything has to be transactional or performative." They sat in comfortable silence and Sarah thought about that rainy night, how desperate she'd been, how impossible it had seemed that help would come, how a stranger had stopped and changed everything. "You know," Ethan said softly, "I still haven't properly returned your thank you. For the jacket, for showing me what matters." Sarah smiled. "You just did. That community center, that's the thank you. For all of us." Ethan pulled her close, and they watched the city lights together, and Sarah felt certain of something she'd doubted for so long. That asking for help wasn't weakness, that accepting kindness wasn't failure, that letting someone into your life meant not less independence, but more strength. Sometimes the simplest act, stopping to help, becomes the moment that repairs not just a car, but an entire heart.